down in the wrecking yard. I met my true love down in the wrecking yard. I met my true love called a wreck Chevrolet, which I see every day.
Fuck you. Give me a bottle of booze. Here's my $1. Suck my dick.
Don't tempt me, I'll drink till the bottle's empty. I'm not in denial, so don't put my life on trial. I never asked for your opinion, I never asked for your advice. You think I'm unable to set my drink down on the table. I hoard it, I guard it, but damn it, I'm the one who bought it. So I don't wanna hear your sermon. You're only preaching to the choir. Nobody's paying you to think. Shut up and pour me a drink. Stop pointing.
Hi, welcome to another episode of The Wrecking Yard. My name is Tony. I'm still the head cheese around here. Anyway, I know it's been a while since my last podcast. Some things have happened. I got sick a few times. Christmas is just busy in general. And not only that, the site has just turned into somewhat of an expense that I have to actually pedal harder in order to cover. And so I have less time, ironically, to devote to the actual site because I'm spending a lot of my time trying to make sure it's paid for. I'm not bitching or anything. I'm not shilling for bucks. Although if you want to donate, you can go to the website and do so. I don't like to ask, so that's as much as I'm going to say about it. This episode, I think, is going to be really interesting, particularly for the folks here in town. When I first started this podcast, these were a couple of the very first people I contacted. It took a while to arrange, I think maybe somewhat because of busy schedules. I know somewhere in there they did a little bit of touring. Also, I couldn't really tell. It might have just been my imagination, but I'm not sure they were really into the idea at first. I think maybe it was something they had to warm to. Even at the beginning of the podcast, it's a little bit choppy for a couple of minutes because I think they were sort of feeling me out to make sure that I wasn't, trying to pull a fast one or something. It turned out great. We had a lot of things in common, had a lot of funny stories to exchange back and forth. I mean, they've been in town since the early 80s. Ironically, they're one of the last bands standing because they're still together. They still put out records. They still tour occasionally. And I talked to, I guess I haven't even said, have I? Today on the podcast, I've got Steve Sloppy and B.A. from Sloppy Seconds. I guess you could call them safely call them the founding members. We had a really entertaining talk. It turns out that we had a lot of musical touchstones in common. And we both had been around a lot of the same people here in town, so we had some, like I say, we had some good stories to exchange. We also have a special guest on the show, although you wouldn't know it unless I told you. Mike Crowder, who was a friend of mine and the band's. We brought him along to sort of add some color commentary, particularly about the subject of the North Side, South Side supposed rivalry, musical rivalry, which I'm not sure was ever as big as some people thought it was. But he was there to sort of add some color about that subject and some others, and it ended up that he didn't really have too much to add. I think he was just letting everybody else talk, and he was not wont to interrupt. He's not the interrupting type, so I think we pulled a few words out of him, but for the most part the talk takes place between me, Steve Sloppy, and B.A. And here it is, my talk with Sloppy Seconds. Alright, so everybody's in a good mood and ready to roll?
The goodest.
Alright. Well, we can just go around the horn and you can introduce yourselves.
Are we rolling?
Sure. We've been rolling for 5 minutes.
Okay.
I started off right at the beginning just in case somebody says something witty when we're not expecting it.
Oh, well, you never know.
You'll have to speak up a little bit though.
Okay.
Since I'm not using the microphones, my
Can
problem.
You adjust your audio on the
No. That's the sad thing about it. It literally is a cassette recorder. It comes with just the basics. My voice is loud enough that it carries over. But like when I interviewed MX80, like Rich Stim was like way off in the corner of this table, and he has a soft voice anyway, and he was telling the best stories, and you can barely hear them unless you like turn it all the way up. He said that when MX80 sent a demo tape to Bronze Records, Uriah Heep's label. Mm-hmm. They called him and they said, "You are the
too, right? Yeah, Motorhead, the first Motorhead."
They called him and they said, "You're the second worst band we have ever heard in our entire lives." And he goes, "Here's the phone number of the worst band we have ever heard." It was Perubu's phone number. Yeah.
That's
so
hilarious.
and Rich Stim tells this story and you cannot hear it. You literally, it's like this. Bronze Records. So yeah. So if you don't mind, just sort of speaking up. And I'm recording too, just in case. When I did not Jello Biafra, but when I did Klaus Fluoride, I recorded it on this one, and this one did something wonky. I don't know what it was, and I lost the whole podcast. So, which was a shame because it was a really good one. Did you know he was in a band with Billy Squier?
No.
He was in a band with Billy Squier.
He wasn't in Piper, because I saw Piper.
Before.
Wow.
Before, like way before. They even recorded demo tapes for CBS, which he said that some of them have leaked out. He said he was a nice guy. They got along well, but he hadn't talked to him since. Okay. I'm sitting here with, go around the horn if you would please.
B.A.
Steve Sloppy.
Mike Crowder.
Okay, now two of you are one half of
Sloppy Seconds.
And Mike here is our special guest, sort of as a color commentator, because a lot of what we're going to be talking about, the time period, he was pretty active on both sides of town. Not that there was any huge rivalry, although some people thought that there was at the time. So we got Mike in here to sort of
Referee?
Not referee, but he had. I mean, he's got insights, from both sides of town, whereas I don't.
And I was known as the fifth member of Sloppy Seconds back in the early days.
Real tambourine?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, he was actually involved in some pre-Sloppy Seconds activities that we have kind of erased from the public history at this point.
Yes, and he went on to manage the Vibrating Velvetones. He went to the Reuben Kincaid School of Band Management, and he was known as,
alone.
Yes, I mean,
puts him in the Indiana Music Hall of Fame.
At that time, but at that point, we just couldn't afford him, so he wasn't able to work with us.
Oh, he's really expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or the Corky McPherson School.
It's true. Baboon is key.
Okay.
What happened?
So we'll start at the beginning. Are both of you born and raised here in Indiana?
Yeah, south side of Indianapolis. Born in St. Francis Hospital and grew up in near University of Indianapolis. At the time, it was Indiana Central College.
So both of you had been here forever.
Southside kids of Indianapolis. Yes.
I see. So let's just start at childhood. I mean, tell me about what you were listening to when you were a kid, things that were important to you that you heard as a kid, or was music important to you at all when you were a kid?
Well, when I was a little kid, one of my earliest memories of rock and roll that seemed to matter, and I guess historically it's kind of impactful and cool, but right across the street from where I lived was one of the only performances of Sonny and Cher. They performed at Indiana Central College years and years ago, and their opening act was a little-known comedy writer at the time by the name of Steve Martin.
Oh, wow.
And urban legend has it that after the show, Steve Martin walked about 100 people from the audience down about 3 or 4 blocks to a McDonald's and had them all just crash the McDonald's after the show. So McDonald's was packed. It had over 100 people in it, ordering Cokes and burgers. So
I'm gonna guess Steve Martin wasn't paying for it on the Pat Paulson show salary.
I'm guessing he probably bailed after their orders were placed.
I would imagine Steve Martin going in, telling all these people to go and order all the food you want, and then sneaking out the door. Wow.
Yeah, I think that I've heard about him doing that a lot in his act at the time. He would order 200 hamburgers for everybody he brought with him, and then just change it to a single Coke and fries at the last minute.
So you didn't actually go see this Sonny and Cher?
No, I didn't
show,
actually
did
go
you?
see it. I had heard about this, and then I started putting it all together later because Martin was one of the writers on the Sonny and Cher TV
Right.
comedy hour, and it's back when he had a big full beard and mustache.
Yeah.
That was probably back when we were like in 4th grade.
Oh
or
God,
something.
yeah, kids.
Before we.
Second, third grade probably.
Well, he got around. I know he wrote for the Smothers Brothers, and he wrote for the short-lived Pat Paulson show, along with Dave Osborne.
That's true.
Oh yeah. Bob Einstein. Right?
Yes.
Isn't that his real name?
Yes.
Einstein.
Yeah, and I think I gave him a bunch of copies of the show. I had the whole series, and both Steve Martin and Super Dave both show up in a bunch of the skits.
Here's something I always like to talk about from the local scene in the early to mid 70s. The Indianapolis Parks Department used to employ this improv troupe called the Gollywogs. Does anybody remember the Gollywogs?
I don't,
Sure.
but I know that in Europe that's an unpleasant moniker to give to somebody.
Well, that's why we haven't been back to Europe in so long. But no, they had a whole routine they would do, and they'd come to your school and perform for you. I posted on a local website about that, and some lady who I guess is probably a good 10, 15 years older than me said that her sister was one of the Gollywogs, and she was going to be sure to let her know that we remembered her. So.
Yeah, we didn't get interesting things like that up in Carmel. We got actually, I remember several times we got police officers who would come in and they would light this incense and they go, "This is what weed smells like. If you smell it, run!" You know, and we had like that several years in a row.
Blue Bombers, Goofballs, Yellow Jackets.
And all of those films that you see on YouTube now, where the guy stealing the stereo to buy weed or whatever, they showed all of those to us. It's like once every couple weeks is like another anti-drug film. It made me so curious to try drugs. I mean, I was just like, man, I can't wait till some hippie offers me some acid. That looks great. What will I listen to while I'm doing it?
Where'd you get that incense?
Yeah. That's what I don't understand too. Sometimes I'll go buy some incense at the store, and they have hemp.
Cock and pussy scented.
Yeah.
But they have hemp incense, and I'm thinking, people light incense. People light incense to hide the fact that they're smoking weed. So why would they?
Smell like weed.
So why would they buy hemp incense? I don't get it. But there it is.
Bought instant water, but you know what to add to it.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get to the first what's the first records that you owned, or what were you buying when you first started buying records? Or
First record I remember buying was a copy of the Monster Mash on a 45 when I was just a little kid.
I did too.
That was one of my first ones.
Well, my first retail purchase of an album was actually Eric Carmen's first solo album.
Really?
The very next week, I bought Kiss Alive.
Okay, now that Eric Carmen, that's a fairly respectable first step, even though that was sort of his first step towards those soundtrack songs that he so specialized
I think
in.
it was the fact that it was reflective.
Yes.
Topper album cover.
And All By Myself was a big hit.
Oh, well,
It was
the
a
other
huge
one
hit.
from that record, Never Want to Fall in Love Again. Now, that was like pure McCartney. I love that song.
Yeah, there's some rockers on there, but they're a little on the paltry side. My first album was Believe in Music by either Ronco or whatever. K-Tel. One of the two was Believe in Music, and I got like 4 or 5 of them because every one of them was warped. I had to keep taking it back. Every time my mom would go to the store, "Can I go with you? I got to return this thing again." And
Remember
then
the double heavy metal K-Tel album? I think it's called Heavy Hits or something.
Yeah.
In gold.
Yeah.
Had Stealin' and Radar Love. And
those are good ones. But and then my albums were too expensive, so my parents would not buy albums from me. But they'd buy 45s every once in a while. And my first I bought 2 45s at the same time. My first 2 records was Candyman by Sammy Davis Jr. and a Gallery, Nice to Be With You. Yeah, those were the first 2, and then my collection kind of blossomed from there. Now, you said Kiss Alive. You're saying that's the second album you may have ever bought?
Yeah, that was I had a paper route at the time, and it only paid like $4 a week. So
I remember.
yeah.
And you had to work for that $4, house to house, collecting from cheap asses who would pretend to be not home because they didn't have $3 to pay you for their bill.
Oh, this wasn't even a daily paper. I was delivering the Spotlight, so I had to deliver to every home in the neighborhood for $4 a week. So yeah, after I paid $3.99 for the Eric Carmen, I paid the 2 weeks later I paid $4.99 for Kiss Alive.
Now I'm assuming Kiss Alive has to figure in with you a little
absolutely,
bit, right?
Absolutely.
But that's not your first.
Damn, it was right up there. Like I say, I was like along with you. I got a lot of those crappy hits compilations and things. There was a Marsh supermarket, like right around the corner from my house, and they had a small little music section where you could get everything from Marvin Gaye to Curtis Mayfield to Elvis Presley, 10cc, and the New York Dolls. And that's where I believe we picked up the first New York Dolls record any of us had ever had. And it was $2.99.
And Monty Python albums
Yes.
too.
I had a lot of comedy albums before I really started having a good rock collection. I had a lot of comedy records. I've already said this many times. I'm going to see if you two agree with me. But would you agree with me that Kiss Alive was kind of like the album that kicked the door open for you, that kind of like made you realize that there was more out there than what you were currently hearing on the radio, or what your parents were listening to, or what your friends were listening to, etc.?
Well, as much as that, I think, he mentioned that little grocery store that had the record album rack, which was situated right next to the comic book rack.
Ooh. And the rock magazines.
And the
where
rock
we got
magazines.
Cream and Hit Parader.
You got to figure out how to spend your money.
Yes.
So I've always felt like Kiss was the perfect door into rock and roll from 10-year-olds who had been collecting comic books and watching the $6 Million Man and had Evel Knievel lunchboxes and things. Well, here's this superhero band, you know? I mean, that was...
Evel Knievel was probably a big thing. I remember Evel Knievel being as big as any rock band.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I used to go down to the drugstore and there'd be like 10 different Evel Knievel magazines, all with the same pictures in them. And I remember one of them was like an Evel Knievel fold-out poster, and I think I almost fainted in the aisle.
It's probably why I've never really taken pro wrestling seriously, because we had Evel Knievel. I mean, that was an icon.
Sure, he was a badass. And, the thing was, it seems like he crashed more often than he succeeded. And everyone was still like, Evel, yeah!
You will get blown to hell.
Yeah. And that Snake River Canyon thing, I mean, like months and months and months, Snake River Canyon, it's coming, Snake River Canyon, it's coming, it's like...
Yeah,
they're like,
the shoot came out like 10 seconds after liftoff.
It was kind of like those Mike Tyson fights where these people spent like, tens of thousands of dollars and it was over in 7 seconds, Right. There was a theory that because Evel Knievel was sponsored by Chuckles, that they gave him an unlimited supply of Chuckles and that he was eating them in the cockpit, and that he dropped them on the floor, and when he leaned over to pick them up, he hit the shoot button.
Wow.
So that was the rumor anyway. I don't know that I believe it. I would hate to blame Chuckles. They're one of my favorite candies. But anyway, my Kiss Alive story is kind of weird, and I told it in the Bill Starkey podcast, so I'll try to keep it short. I was watching TV one night, and there was a commercial for Kiss came on. I think it was either they were going to be on like Midnight Special the next week or whatever. It was like 30 seconds. And I'm looking at it going like, wow, that's got to be the weirdest thing I've ever seen. What the hell is going on there?
Yeah.
I'm never going to see anything weirder than this. And then after the commercial, Kraftwerk came on. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on in this world? I mean, what? A couple months later, whatever, I go to school one morning, and my friend Phil, he's got this booklet that came inside Kiss Alive. And I was like, hey, that's really cool. Can I see that? And I'm looking through it, and I said, where'd you get this? He goes, it came in the album. And I said, what album? He goes, Kiss Alive. I said, they give you a free book with the album? He goes, yeah. So I go home. I got this white
plastic Jaws piggy bank that has no, once you open it, it's open. So I got out a steak knife at the bottom. I shook all the change out, and I walked a couple miles down the street to Airway. Not Target, but Airway.
Airway.
As Providence would have it,
Was that across the street from Zaire? Because our area.
This was up in Nora Plaza.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, as Providence would have it, I had the exact change down to the penny. And I'm like, whew, so I get it, and I'm walking home, and my parents were divorced, and my dad lived halfway between where I was and where I was going. So I stopped by to say hi to my dad. He wasn't home. My stepmom was. She goes, what are you doing? I said, I just went and bought this album. She goes, let me see it. So I pull it out. She looks at it. She goes, you're going to hell. And then she hands it back to me. And without hearing a note, that became my favorite record right at that moment. I was like going, I am going to love this when I get home, whether I love it or not. And, of course, I did. I mean, I think that there are very few records in this world that I've listened to as many times as I've listened to that.
Well, it's
record.
hard to even get past side one. I mean,
I did for days. I didn't get past side. I didn't hear Black Diamond until like 3 months later. And the thing was, and people don't understand this, but there was a sweet spot right when that album came out, because it sounded kind of raw. It wasn't polished. The songs were 3 or 4 chords at the most. But they were catchy. And when I tell people, I say, well, I might not have ever listened to the Ramones if I hadn't, gotten that Kiss Alive album. People disassociate Kiss from anything serious after Kiss, just because all they know is, the Love Gun, the Phantom of the Park era, blah, 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 blah. But there was that spot before then, before they were huge, when they were sort of your weird little band,
Well, I mean, to this day, I've never heard anybody that sounds quite like Paul Stanley.
No.
I mean, you can compare some vocalists to Gene Simmons' vocal style, but I've never heard anybody who vocalizes the way Paul Stanley does. I mean,
with one caveat, that guy in Red Cross.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's true.
Because everybody thought that was Paul Stanley for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
and let's don't forget those early David Bowie records we got, Diamond Dogs and everything back in the day. That helped broaden our horizons,
what came after Kiss Alive? I mean, after that sort of kicked down the door, what were you grabbing?
Destroyer.
Probably the first. Well, yeah. I mean, we worked backwards like to the Kiss catalog.
Yeah, they were like bookends. So it's like we got the Kiss Alive, and then we gradually got, we got to get the rest of this stuff. So B.A. picked up the originals.
The triple discs.
Did that come with a book too?
Oh yeah, it had the Diplomat Hotel ad on it and everything. Yeah.
Now, were you guys disappointed in the studio albums when you got them? Did they sound slow, particularly in the Hotter Than Hell era, or did they sound like maybe underproduced or kind of thin?
Well, over the years, I probably did feel that way at the time, because early on, I probably couldn't have told you half the songs on the studio albums, the ones that weren't on the live in the first place. But my favorite Kiss songs over the years have tended to be some of the deep cuts, like Coming Home, Let Me Go, those
Strange
kind
Ways.
of songs. Yeah. What's the one with the cowbell? All the way, songs like that. Anything from My Baby.
Yeah.
So we kind of explored the Kiss cat. Queen, Night at the Opera was big at the time, and that was another one we got into immediately.
I remember
huge
when that
Queen
hit.
fans.
Yeah. I picked Night of the Opera up. I think you might have got it before me, and then I remember getting my copy at Airway. I remember that.
Yeah, mine was the slick cover. You had the buff cover.
Yeah, that was embossed. Yeah, it was printed. It was raised. The logo was raised, I think, on it. Yeah.
I gotta pause just for 1 second. I didn't think to ask this. So you guys have known each other since like forever?
Third grade.
Really?
Yeah, we're essentially brothers. Yeah.
And you met in third. Now, did you guys just sort of bump into each other, or did you have common interests?
Well, we had common interests, but one of the main things that attracted us to each other is we just happened to have the exact same lunchbox at the time. So we decided that it would be cool if we could sit across the table from each other so we could look at each other's lunch boxes.
My friend Phil, who I've known since first grade, when I got there, I was a new kid in school, and he was assigned to me. She was like, show him around. He had a Hogan's Heroes lunchbox, and I coveted that thing. I was just like, that is the coolest lunchbox I've ever seen. A Hogan's Heroes lunchbox.
We both had the U.S. mail lunchbox.
Yeah.
And
it was red, white, and blue. It was shaped like a traditional lunch pail,
right.
But it was colored and decorated to look like a U.S. mailbox.
Yeah, so it was a mailbox lunchbox.
Yeah. Essentially, yeah.
So how handy. You could do double duty.
Yeah. I don't know which one of us had the better wacky packages on it. But,
come on, man. All wacky packages were great.
Because we all live in a big punk house like the Beatles and Hard Day's Night.
I'm going to pick up right where you said.
That's kind of like what it's like. So
really?
It's just craziness.
Who gets the sunken bedroom in the middle of the house?
Night after night after night. So,
well, that's how I mow the grass with those chattering teeth.
B.A. takes a bath in a bathtub full of gin. It just pickles himself,
All right, now, Mike, you've been a little silent here. How long have you known these guys?
I've probably known them since they were in the 3rd grade because we met through Indiana Central Little League. We all played Little League together, at least Steve and Steve's brother, Bo. And I think we were 9 or 10 when we met, right? It was major, minor.
Something like that. See, I was surprised. I didn't know that you were... When I discovered... I met you somewhere because I remember discovering you later because I didn't know you played baseball. Because I remember saying, hey, Mike, because the first thing I remember over there, and I still remember your comeback to this day, it's like, hey, I didn't know you played baseball over here. You were catcher, and you were getting a drink of water and going back to playing, and you said, yeah, it keeps me out of trouble. It's cool as hell. It keeps me out of trouble.
Well, see, now this is weird, because after 1st grade, I completely lost track of Phil. Who's now, very close to one of my very best friends. Easily one of the 2 or 3 people I've known the longest. I met him again playing Little League baseball. I'm standing on first base. I'm ready to run. I look over the first baseman, this dude, big dude. I'm like going, Phil? And here's the kicker. He didn't remember me. Finally, I went like, Hogan's Heroes lunchbox. I was like, you told me my first dirty joke, which he did. The first dirty joke I ever heard, he told me, and I told it to him. He was like, yeah, I guess that was me. And then we kind of reconnected. He was really into Uriah Heep and Ted Nugent and stuff at the time. It was a couple years later, and I used to go to his house, and he'd lend me records.
Deep Purple.
Hey, I still have a soft spot for the Heap to this day.
I know, but not when you're 10.
What a boring kid.
It was a couple of years later.
All right.
Okay, but we were both interested in music, and that sort of became our common currency, Mike, you kind of like Kiss, didn't you?
Yeah, I was the same way. Kiss Alive.
Was that your first
groundbreaking record? It was the first full-length record that I remember buying and actually playing. Yes.
Wow.
Well, I think there's a significance to this Little League connection everybody has, because I would hang out there and watch your team play when you had games, but on days when you weren't even playing, we would hang out there and just get an hour laters and a suicide, because that's what you did before the information age.
Yeah.
There was no computer, there was no cable.
Yeah.
There were 3 channels, and if you didn't want to sit home and watch Barney Miller or something, you would go to the Little League.
Yeah.
Or the community center.
Have
where
snow cones and a hot dog and look at the girls.
They had a little portable record player with all these, Alice Cooper and Rush.
Rush and Alice Cooper and
stole from the community center. That was how we expanded our record collection.
We'd steal albums from the community center.
$1 Billion Babies was a big record for me too.
Oh yeah. Alice Cooper, actually, and we really started retroactively learning about the Beatles albums right after that initial barrage of Kiss, Queen, Aerosmith, Alice Cooper,
Well, see, I always figured that maybe I was a little bit weird, but you know, when I finally kind of, like I say, after Kiss Alive and a couple other things, and I really started digging. I was like, oh, you know, this guy played with this guy who put out this back then, blah, blah, blah. And I loved it. I loved digging back and discovering stuff. You know, you get this album, you go, well, I've heard this is really good. You take it on, put it on, and the first song you'd hear, you knew that song. And you'd go, oh, I know that song. I love that song. And, you know, you just keep digging and digging and digging, and you would find the things that you heard on WIFE when you were a kid, when your parents were taking you to your grandma's house or whatever.
And what's fun about that and what made that mean something at the time is because you actually had to work to get that information. You couldn't just fucking Google it.
Well, I assume you guys went through those import bins to find what punk rock records were out this week.
Well, I assume you guys were Cream and Circus readers as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Now, do you remember what it was like? And this is the way it was for me, is you'd buy Cream or Circus or whatever. You'd be flipping through.
Or steal it.
Or steal it. And you'd see like an ad for a new Who album. And you had no idea that there was a new Who album out until you saw that ad. You were like, oh shit, there's a new
found out about Love
Who
Gun
album.
was the ad in Rolling Stone.
Yeah. But nowadays, all you have to do is follow a couple of different websites, and you know that Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey have gone into the studio on August 27th, whatever, blah, 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 and that you can expect an album in 8 months' time or whatever.
Sure, they had each had 2 cups of tea.
Yeah, there's no surprise anymore. But back then, you know, sometimes you can flip. By the time you get done flipping through a magazine, you've realized there's 3 or 4 albums out that you really want, that you had no idea were coming out.
That's how we found Angel, was just by looking at the ads in the magazines.
Yep.
Yes, Angel. Okay, were you at any of those shows?
Of course.
Yes.
Gods, Angel and Gods at the Circle Theater.
How about the one before?
One at the Indiana Theater.
At the Indiana Theater with Piper and Stars?
Oh, man. What a lineup. I'd love to have seen
that.
No, we don't think we went to that one.
That was one of the first shows.
Was that the Hell of a Band tour?
I think so.
Okay.
Or yes, it was, because it was
we saw them
between
on
Hell of a Band.
It was Piper was on the bill. It couldn't have been any later than that.
Yeah, it was between Hell of a Band and On Earth. But the thing about that one is these 2 guys in front of us were super drunk, and one of them kept yelling the entire fucking show, like all 3 bands, the entire fucking show. Piss runs downhill, like just over and over and over again for the entire show. But I'm telling you, dude, here's the thing: we're watching this, you know, and they come out in those boxes and they appear, and we're freaking, because I'm like 15 and I'm like going, ah. I mean, you know, I hear these, you know, back then you knew synthesizer noises, but you didn't really know where they came from. So you'd hear like this, and you'd be really impressed. You'd go like, whoa, that must take some real musicianship to make a noise like that. So there's all this shit going on, you know, and then the logo comes up and you're looking at it. I remember poking Phil going like, I could swear I just saw that face move on that logo. And then it, you know, can you feel the music? Remember? And we're like going,
come forth and play your harp, monkey man.
Yeah, these guys are the greatest band ever. And then that Indiana show, the one that you saw, boxes were cool. It all worked great. We were kind of hyped up because the gods had turned us into rock and roll machines that my parents had warned me about. And then I remember, I'm telling everyone how cool this show was. Like, oh man, wait till you see this, wait till you see this. And that head goes up. I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was like a hair, like a matted hair that had stuck in the projector. And it was like going in front of the face. And then the lips started moving, but it didn't say anything. It was nothing. And I saw this roadie roll up this shirt and throw it at the thing, and it still didn't do anything. And by this time, Frank Domino had noticed. He turns around and he goes, can you feel the music? And that was it. And I remember thinking, well, it was really better the first time, guys. I'm sorry.
Wow, yeah, that was a great
Still a great show, though. I mean, you get to see Punky Meadows come out there with those long... I guess you've heard that like 3 of them got back together for like a short tour, right?
I heard something about that, and
heard your Greg Freer wasn't involved.
He's like bald as an egg now, right?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter how any of them look. They're all doing better than Michael Lee Smith is right now. Oh, yeah. Oh my God! It's like seeing a band fronted by Oliver Hardy.
Really?
It's not good.
You were aware he's Rex Smith's brother, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We got
a great Michael Lee Smith story.
Oh, go ahead.
We met Star at an in store at Obadiah's on the south side of Indy.
So
Take it away,
This
babe.
teenage girl says, "Sign my album," and he writes, "Suck my cock." She said, "No. Can you write
It's for
something
my
clean?"
sister. It was for my little sister.
So he just wrote clean. Suck my cock clean.
Well, Brendan Harkin either was from or went to IU. He was either from Bloomington.
I never knew that.
Yeah, he was either from Bloomington or he went to IU, and somehow or another he ended up staying at my uncle's house in New York for a couple of weeks. And this was like right after the first album came out. And my mom called my uncle, and Brendan Harkin answered the phone, and she goes, "Can I talk to my uncle?" And he goes, "No, I'm expecting a phone call." Click, and hung up. And so my mom always hated Stars. If I brought up a Stars, she goes, "That's an asshole that hung up on me."
Well, speaking of members of Stars, now did you or did you not do record shows with Richie Rano?
Yeah. Richie did shows in, I don't know, mid to late 80s on through the 90s. We'd do the traveling circuit. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
So he did.
So you got an insight on some cool Stars stories, I'm sure.
Well, did the same thing with Bill O'Coin, that how close they were and yet how far away they were.
Yeah. Are you kidding? Mike was the inspiration for Piss Party.
Attention shoppers.
Okay, we'll move it ahead a little bit. At what point did either one of you start playing an instrument?
I still don't.
He can actually don't. He's actually written some of the music for some of the better Sloppy songs. Trust me, we've always toyed around with little junky guitars. He pounded out the melody for Lonely Christmas and Mighty Heroes on like a 2-string fucking acoustic beater just to have the tempo and
Right.
the arrangement.
So you don't play anything?
No, I've never learned how. There's a couple songs where I've kind of worked out the melody on like the low E string on a acoustic guitar, but I've never learned how to play anything.
And when did you start?
I've never had, believe it or not, I've never had any lessons. I've just always I basically played in my dresser. I played the headboard of my bed. I played shoe boxes. I played pots and pans. My mom
Broomsticks, hockey sticks,
well, my mom
baseball
got
bats?
me my first drum was a snare drum, a little toy snare drum that I can't remember how old I was. I was definitely less than 10 probably. It came with crummy little wooden sticks, and she got it at Tucker State Pharmacy on Shelby Street. And I just opened that up, sat in the back seat of the station wagon and was pounding on it and just toying with it. And the next thing I knew, I was doing a drum roll. And my mom looked back and she was kind of surprised. But it just always just came naturally. I mean, I'm not that dynamic, but I enjoy doing what I do. You know,
Right.
and then as a teenager, I tapped a lot on my dresser and just any fucking thing. I mean, I've driven people crazy because sometimes in the middle of the night I'll wake up and as I roll over I'll just reach my hand above my head and tap something.
I do the same thing.
Constantly. It's always that beat's always in my fucking head. I'll be driving and I'll be clicking my teeth together to an unrelated rhythm, whatever's on the radio. It could be talk radio. Yeah, and I'm just it's always there.
My parents would not have bought me a drum set if it came with a $100,000 gift certificate. They did not want to hear that noise at all, period. And I had exposure to the drums because I used to go and spend the summers down at my grandma's house in Brown County, and my uncle, who had a drum set, left his drum set and all his records there when he went to college. So what I would do is, like when my grandma would start washing dishes or go do something in another part of the house, I would sneak back there and put on the headphones, because for some reason I thought that with the headphones on they couldn't hear it. And I would always put on something from Magical Mystery Tour. For some reason, I just loved that album cover, and like I put Strawberry Fields or something on there, and I'd start. And about 30 seconds later, my grandma would come back. Hey, come on, you're not supposed to be on those. Go off, and I'd sneak back on them several other times during the day. But other than that, I had no experience with the drums whatsoever until a year out of high school. And I never really became very good at it. I mean, I was all upper arms and just basically just keeping things going forward. I could never do anything complicated or keep any sort of a weird beat, or for that matter, make my hands and my feet do different things at the same time. Okay, so you got a drum set at this point, and you're playing, and you're thinking, oh man, I'd really like to have other people playing with me.
Well, how Okay, I'll share the boring story of how Sloppy Seconds got together.
You can make it as exciting
Well,
as you wish. You can add
it's
like
really,
nudity and all sorts
it's
of
really
stuff.
not that exciting. It was mid what was it, 85 probably, 80 at a house party.
83. probably.
83, yeah, 83. 83.
First summer, everybody actually had
Okay.
cable and MTV.
Okay. So and
we're having a house party at
and
my
BA's
place.
BA's parents are gone, of course, and he's hid all the valuables and then set the lamps out of the way so no one will fall and destroy anything. So we just gathered up a little bit, get a few instruments together and just started fucking around, banging on things. I think I had a snare and a kick drum and a ride set. It wasn't even a full kit, and bass and guitar and. Who was were you BA? Were you playing bass at the time, or was it Bo, or what? We were fucking around. We were doing like old 50s covers, just drunk as shit, just pounding on anything we can think of at the time.
That's how I started on shit like Red River Rock and stuff, like real easy, simple, like late 50s, early 60s.
We were doing Eddie Cochran.
Yeah, it was mostly just like Eddie Cochran. We would. Do something else and Come On Everybody and
we didn't have a
Summertime
singer.
Blues, shit like that. So, yeah, I mean, how it developed was I was the only one who knew the words to the songs. I mean, even Danny, who'd been like performing solo a little bit at that point with an acoustic guitar, didn't really like have a photographic memory for the lyrics. And,
right.
That I just became the singer by default because like I said, I've never learned to play anything. And
yeah, I know.
Steve and Bo just took off with borrowed instruments and went from there.
And it wasn't that I was that great of a drummer. It's just I was the only one that had a concept of it. So I was essentially indoctrinated into my role by default as well.
So by this time, punk rock had become part of your DNA.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
hell yeah.
And so okay, let's start there. After Kiss Alive and Queen and all this stuff, what was your first exposure to punk, and did you like it immediately, or did you have to warm to it?
It actually was not the Ramones; it was the Sex Pistols.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
We saw the segments on what was it, Weekend of Edwin Newman interviewing Joe Strummer or something.
Yes. that was a very, very huge thing.
Yeah.
The punk invasion of the U.S. and
I mean, you would see little snippets. I think being in Indianapolis, you just kind of had to wait until the culture from the coast filtered into the Midwest. So you'd occasionally on late night TV see Elvis Costello performing or something like that. But for the most part, it's like you guys were all saying earlier, you really had to work to find out.
Put
about
effort
music.
into it. Yeah. Well, my thing was, and this was, I lucked into it. My uncle was moving to New York. He went out to look for an apartment. He came back and he says, hey, look, he says, I saw this band. You're probably going to love them. They're called the Ramones. If you ever see an album, just go ahead and buy it. And I was like, yeah, all right. And we kept seeing pictures of the Ramones in rock scene. This was before they had an album out. We're like going, how?
They always looked cool.
What the hell would these guys even sound like? And so one day I go to the beauty shop with my mom, which was next door to Nova Records up in Carmel, and there's that Ramones album. And it was my birthday, so I just happened to have some money. And I was like, well, fuck it, I'll buy it. Whatever. It was $4.81, which made it $5 even with tax. So I bought it, I took it home, I put it on. I'm like, all right, okay, that's pretty cool. And the next song came on, I'm like going, oh man, I think I got a defective one. That's the same song as the one before. And then I put it on again. I was like, oh, wait a minute, the words are different. Okay. And it took me an hour or so. And finally, at the end of it, I'm like jumping up and down on my bed. I'm just like going, like this, And then I went to visit my uncle. It was like about a year later. And it was when that show you just mentioned was on. Remember, Saturday Night Live used to be on three nights out of the month. And then the fourth, they would have like a news show. Well, we went out that day, and I had bought like the Talking Heads, Love's Ghost Building on Fire, Wayne County, some of that really early punk stuff.
Yeah.
Half of it didn't even count as punk. And I got a copy of God Save the Queen. And we went to Bleecker Bob's, and they had EMI copies of Anarchy in the UK for $5. And I was like, $5 for a 45? Are you fucking kidding me? And my uncle goes, you should probably get it. I'm here. Here, I'll buy it for you. So I got it, took it home. I didn't listen to them because we didn't have time. And then we ended up watching that show that night. And I remember my uncle laughing really loud because they assumed that we couldn't understand the lyrics. Remember, they had the lyrics along the bottom with the bouncing ball.
Yeah.
So the next day, I get up, and my uncle's sitting on this stool with a pair of headphones and a cup of coffee and my 45s. And he's going, God damn, you got to hear this. And that was it. I mean, I came home from that vacation, and I started giving away albums. I was like, here, you guys want these Emerson, Lake and Palmer records? I don't, Bob Seger, here, you can have that. I don't care. I don't need these anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I came back from there with, like, the first Damned album. They had just reissued the Stooges records at that time.
Yeah.
So I kind of came back
the
with a
safety
basic
pin sticker.
Yes.
Real original punk rock.
So I came back with sort of like this care package that only very, very few of my friends cared anything about.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how it was with you. Were you guys
we
able
were
to get your friends excited about it?
We were the weird kids on the south side.
Exactly. So, and I was the one on the north side. So
Yeah, Well, I mean, some of the idiots I grew up with. I mean, they thought Cheap Trick was punk rock.
I wore a Cheap Trick shirt to school and almost got beat up because some guy said, "You fucking faggot punk rocker," and I'm like, dude, have you heard? I mean, what? Yeah. So it was weird back then. People don't understand that at the beginning anyway, people saw it as kind of a threat, to what was normal to them. I mean, my school song was reminiscing. Okay, that was about the speed of things in 1979.
Oh yeah.
I
mean, you think about the whole culture back then. I mean, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were considered punk for
the
about
first
15
couple
minutes,
records. Yeah.
I mean, it's
that was
they did Tom Petty songs on the Chipmunk Punk album.
Yes, yes, I remember. Well, they also did Billy Joel's, like, what was that? They did a Billy Joel song on one of them.
Still rock and roll to me, probably.
No, it was
sometimes a fantasy maybe or something.
No. It was one of his, like, where Billy Joel tried to be like a rocker.
He didn't start the fire.
No, it would have been.
It was before that. Yeah.
Big Shot.
But yeah, none of my, very, very few of my friends took any interest in it at all. And at that time also, you couldn't buy records here in town. Karma wasn't a thing yet. Second time around wasn't a thing yet. I had to get Trouser Press, go to the back with all the ads, and I go, okay, I'm going to send $2 to this band Devo and see what they got.
Boy, I miss Trouser Press.
And I got 2 letters printed in Trouser Press, and one of them I pointed out all the times he had made a mistake because I was really pissed off that he pissed all over Get Happy, but he thought London Calling was the greatest album ever, and it really pissed me off. So I said, okay, look, boom. I said, when the Buzzcocks first came out, you said they sucked and they didn't have any hooks. I said, when Elvis Costello came out, you said it was Nick Lowe under a disguise, and I just listed all this shit that he got wrong. And when he printed the letter, he took all that shit out except for the end, and then he insulted me. And if you ever want to see it, it's the one that's got Ray Davies on the cover.
Wow. So, was this a rant against Ira Robbins?
Yes.
Okay, well, he didn't like us much either.
But
he kind of said, "Don't waste your time with the destroyed albums."
Yes. And I still say that Get Happy is a better record than London Calling. Still. So I might be in the minority there.
They're pretty good albums.
Well, when I went to the record store to get Nevermind the Bullocks, I think it was the Record Warehouse on Kentucky Avenue or something. It was one of those places.
Yep.
I went in there to get it. It was a beautiful rack. Had a single rack of this really obnoxious looking pink cover from a
So you got the American issue?
Yes.
Okay, because I ended up getting an import that had a slightly different track order at the record company in Broad Ripple. They always had a really good import section. They were kind of pricey,
They did.
but they always had a really good import section. And because the Gizmos used to practice at their warehouse, while they were practicing, sometimes I get to go through the lion's share warehouse and find stuff that they hadn't put out in stock yet.
You know what I got from the used bin the same day you bought that? The old Mercury pressing of The Man Who Sold the World.
Yeah. You did. I remember that.
With that weird indecipherable cover?
Yeah.
Do you remember that that new band that was on the scene that was their debut album was next to Nevermind the Bullocks on the wall?
At that point, was it what, Van Halen?
Boston.
Boston?
Yeah. First Boston album.
I still have a soft spot for that first one. I say that if you can somehow erase from your mind that you know who it is and listen to it with a completely clean brain, that you can fool yourself into thinking it's the Raspberries. In places. In places. You can do it. Especially when he hits those soaring high vocal harmonies, which they do have. And the songs are catchy. There's like one song on it I always skip over. I forget what it is, but...
Smoking?
Would I skip over smoking? Come on, Mike. All right, so...
Well, what about, Tony, what do you think of Ram Jam? Did you like them?
I didn't. I didn't. No. Because, that was right around the time when the Ramones and stuff started happening, and that was around the time when I was giving away my old albums. Okay, so you're playing drums and you're singing. At one point, did one or both of you say, "Hey, we should make this official. Let's start a band"?
I'm trying to think.
We did.
It was probably like 6 months or so before we actually bothered to write a song. At first, I think we were just kind of trying to learn. What did we back in the old days? We would like just learn all the covers everybody learns, Wild Thing and half the Johnny Thunder songbook, all that stuff. And I guess it was probably about 7 or 8 months later before we actually started writing songs. Our very first public show we ever played was in Bloomington, and we only had one original.
Yeah.
Who started the writing?
B.A. did.
It was I kind of came up with a tune in my head. We have a really bass-ackwards writing style. I've never heard of anybody else that does this, but a lot of times I kind of write out the lyrics and have a tune worked out in my head and everything. Basically, I just sing the song to either the guitarist or bass player, and they write the chords around my tune. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and the song kind of changes when, they'll say, well, how about if we do this music and we'll change the tune? But for the most part, that's the way the songs evolve.
Right.
It's really a reverse way of doing things. I don't know how
that is kind of a reverse
stuff
way.
like that.
Well, now that what I would find strange there is that your songs, while plainly tilling the punk rock soil, are fairly catchy. I mean, you guys are pretty good with the melody. You guys are really good with a hooky chorus. And usually that stuff comes along when there's one person writing. Very, very, very few times will you find much in the way of vocal harmonies and really catchy choruses written by committee. It's almost always one guy who's writing it down and then teaching that to everyone else.
Well, I think we have different approaches. Like, I'm strictly a lyrics guy. So I always think in terms of what the song's going to be about and what, this is going to be the line that's really going to sell it and everything. Steve thinks strictly in terms of hooks and catchiness. So, he'll say, well, what if we did, it's the background vocal right here or something like that.
I help I'll give suggestions for lines, or like if I'll have an idea for a song, I'll bring it to B.A. and I'll say, well, here's the chorus. What can we do to add a verse to this? I've got this. I think this song sounds a little bit like this one, but it doesn't. So I need a word. Give me a word for this particular line, and we'll come up with something. I mean, there's been times he and I've sat around and come up with a song in 20 minutes. B.A. is by large our chief lyricist. We all have contributed writing to it, but as far as just the structure of the song, myself and Bo have been like the primary structuring of it. Okay. At the time when Roadkill was in the band, or even Ace, they're largely more focused on guitar nuances.
Okay, so Mach 1, the first band lineup is who, other than the two of you?
Boba Jan, the bass player, and was Roadkill on guitar.
Okay. For some reason I thought that you were all pretty much the same members from beginning, but I guess that doesn't make sense.
No, Roadkill.
It's almost impossible to keep people together.
Here, collectively, the three of us have been the creative core of the band. We're always going to stay together. Roadkill left the band in '93. He wanted to do his own thing. Great guitar player, very talented. We wish him the best of luck with everything. You know, we never had anything bad to want to say about him or wish him any ill will.
Right.
We auditioned probably. It was over a dozen people, wasn't it, at the time? We even had the one guy, Terry, who looked like Ben Franklin, with his Ibanez Iceman audition, which was odd.
Wow, visually that would have been
it was amazing.
We had it all worked out.
You get him some pantaloons and a puffy shirt.
Exactly, yeah. We were thinking he's got to do that.
Yeah, like string a kite from his amp.
That would be great.
But that was bizarre. He had a cracked Ibanez Iceman, and we're like, we more wanted his guitar in the band than him, kind of. But
there was about a 6-month period where we would just do live shows with whoever was a friend that was available to fill in.
Yeah, we even took a friend of ours, a guy named Kevin Carl. He's a producer. He's in a band called Gee Whiz out of the Southwest for a while. We actually took him over to Europe with us the first time we went over there. And, that was odd. That was because that was like a trial by fire because we took him over there just a few weeks right after Roadkill left the band.
Okay, well now you mentioned Danny earlier. Did you guys know Danny from early on?
About the time we were finishing up high school, we met Danny, and he would come into those wild weekend parties we were throwing at my house and stuff, and that was really how the idea of us all playing instruments. He had a little microphone and PA of his own.
Yeah, I was dating a girl at the time whose friend knew a guy that was actually friends with Danny. So he kind of met him through that little connection, and he kind of came into the picture at the time.
Right, now, and he was in the lineup for a good spell, right?
About 10 years or so.
That's a good spell.
Yeah.
A lot of bands don't last 3 months.
That's true.
So, and this was after you auditioned a bunch of other people?
No. I mean, that was the original lineup. It was just we didn't form a band. We were just some friends at a party who just picked up instruments one night just for the hell of it.
So you're saying it just sort of happened by osmosis?
Exactly.
Like you guys were fucking around, and then like a year later, like, oh, I guess we're a band.
Yeah, we would have been friends and hanging out to this day, even if we weren't in a band. One of those things. So the band is just like, it's just something
else we do.
Yeah, just to fuck around.
Right. Okay, so you formed and you're playing out, and now did you put out your first record, or did somebody else put it out?
Well, we paid to have it recorded. We recorded it at Deal Production Studios when they did our first full length was Destroyed. Prior to that, we did a 7-inch record. Where did we record that? September? Where did we record? No, it was at
7 inches.
Was it
Hit City? Wasn't it?
Yeah, Hit City off 54th and College.
That's where we recorded our thing.
Yeah, we recorded we recorded 4 or 5 songs there with Mayhern, and we decided to do it was the first 7-inch EP we did, first 7 inches, and after we did that I think we paid for that independently. It was like I think we had 2,000 copies printed up. We probably sent about 300 of them out as promo. We just sent them there was a company. It was like an Rockpool or some kind of an Interpool company. I think they were somehow affiliated with that. So we sent them. We bundled up 300 copies of it. I remember B.A. and I folding covers and putting them in the plastic sleeves. We sent 300 copies of that out, and they sent it out to various places to get reviewed, and the reviews came along and they were very positive. You were happy to see they made a lot of people's top 10 lists for 7 inches of that year for punk, and we just thought, well, fuck, why don't we just take these songs and these other ones we've been messing around with and try to collectively record a record over the next year and see what we could come up with, and then throw that out and see what people think of it.
Now this was like what, 85, 86?
86 is, I think, did we start recording Destroyed around 87 or 88? It took about a year and a half to record that album.
The first EP was 87.
Yeah.
And then we did the tracks on Black Widow Frisbee next. Yeah, that vocal compilation. And then over the course of, it took forever to record Destroyed.
Yeah,
we kept putting it on our credit cards, the studio charge. So
Would work
Every
a
time
little
we
bit.
pay down the balance a little bit, we'd go in and say, okay, well, here's another $500 we need to record.
Yeah.
And then we, lay down like 7 or 8 more bed tracks.
Yeah.
And try to knock 'em out.
It was expensive back then. Look, I paid for the math bats. I paid for everything. I paid
Yeah.
for the pressing. I paid for the cover printing. I paid for the mailing of the goddamn thing out. And nobody, I'd say probably less than 10 people ever really bought one because I gave them away to everybody. And then some distribution company in Europe wanted like 300 or 400 of them, and I never heard from them again. So there's like a bunch of them over in Europe floating around.
Oh, yeah, what was that label out of San Francisco, or distributor out of San Francisco that went under with all those Systematic. Joe Pope and Systematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was common back then. I mean, bands, it was
Oh,
easy,
yeah.
it was
I mean,
easy
it
to
was-
screw a band back then if you wanted
Oh
to.
yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think we could do what we did in the late 80s now, because there was that network. You could put out a 7-inch EP, send a couple hundred copies, and it would end up at basically every college radio station in the
Right.
country. It could get reviewed in Flipside and Maximum Rock and Roll. I just don't think that kind of, I hate to say DIY, but that kind of network exists anymore.
I don't think it does. Well, I think I think these days it's just YouTube. I think somebody puts something on YouTube and hopes a bunch of people look at it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now I met you for the first time around, I'd say around that time. It'd be 85 or 86. And what was weird is I remember that you used to call me fairly often and ask me like advice for stuff like, hey, we're going to do this, should we do this, should we do this, blah, blah, blah. And I was always very flattered that you thought that we were more successful or better than we actually were, because I was always going, well, Steve, we're doing it like this, but I'm no expert. I don't know what
Well,
the fuck we're doing.
actually, I remember calling. I remember calling you a couple of times to see about the insight about putting together or the costs of doing a record. I remember that because I knew you guys had done your Math Bats record came out before Destroyed as a full length, and I was curious about that because I didn't have any, I had met you and you were like the closest I guess benchmark to help me kind of
Right.
figure that out or understand that. And also it was always fun to share Bill Levine stories.
Well, that's always fun, but see, that's the other thing too. Is I remember us having discussions because we used to play a lot of shows when bands would come to town. I mean, look, and we weren't that popular. If we played a show on our own, nobody showed up. But if we opened for like the Replacements or Husker Du or Violent Femmes or whoever the hell came to town, the place would be packed. And I remember everybody in town thought that we either had some secret deal with Bill Levine or that one of us was sucking his dick or something. And here's the thing.
We've all been there.
Right, but it's so much simpler than that, and I want to share it with you guys. It was literally this simple. Bill would get a phone call, and they were all at the patio, except for a couple of the Sherwood. They were all at the patio. Bill would get a call. He'd go, okay, who's going to do $300? That's how much they cost to play the patio, $300. He goes, okay, fine. He would walk over to my store because it was only a block away, and he'd go, you guys want to open? I go, yeah. He goes, okay. And that would be it. And Bill would do that simply because it made his workload disappear. It was like all the work would be done. All he had to do is ask, you want to do it? Yeah. Okay, fine. Boom. And that was it. It wasn't like he didn't like us better or anything like that. He just knew that we were easy to deal with. We could walk our equipment over, so he knew we'd never be late.
Sure.
And that was it.
Well, actually, whether or not he loved you or hated you, he was smart enough to realize that if he has a Broad Ripple centrally based band, the show is going to be hyped and promoted,
Right.
big time. So that wasn't,
here's the other
that was a
thing.
smart thing for him to do.
Mike told me this just recently, and I did not know this all those years past, okay? But I would always ask Bill and say, Bill, I said, you get us a lot, you get whatever band Paul's in at the moment a lot. I said, but there's Sloppy Seconds, there's Too Cool down on the south side. How come you never bring them here? I think you brought Too Cool once or twice, did you not? Or did he never? I don't remember. But
Probably more Marvin than Bill.
Yeah.
but Mike told me that you guys at that time weren't doing any shows that weren't all ages. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were trying to do that, and it was largely it was just kind of a political thing for us at the time because I remember trying to sneak into the Vogue to see the Ramones, and they took my ID away, and I thought this is total fucking bullshit.
Right.
I mean, we were getting kids that were starting to actually write us from out of town
Sure.
and talking about wanting to come see us, and I'm like,
But do you
they
regret
can't
not
fucking
doing the
come.
occasional bar show? I mean, couldn't
We
you have
did the
done
occasional bar show. We played the patio a
We
handful.
were starting out. When we started booking our own shows, we made sure
Yeah.
they were all ages.
Yeah, right.
But no, we would have loved to have done some of those bills. I mean, I was a huge Replacements fan at the time. You know, we got the Mentors gig. That was about the
Yeah.
only one.
Yeah, in the
and
dead of
opening
winter
for
for-
Fugazi. That was the dumbest
Yeah.
shit ever.
Yeah.
Well, see now, that is the only show I can remember seeing you guys at. Is the Fugazi show. Although, when you opened for the Mentors, was that over at that
Twilight
place?
Zone.
Okay, then I saw you there too then. But the thing I remember about the Fugazi show is
You remember more about it than I do because I remember Dick about that.
oh,
show.
I'll tell
I
you-
just remember Ian McKay standing at the back of the Arlington Theater pissing against the wall.
I'll tell you what
That's all I
I
remember.
exactly remember about that night was one is I never, and this is going to be bad for some people to hear, I never liked any of that Discord shit. I always thought it was overrated, and if someone's gonna lecture me about what I should and shouldn't do, at least give me a fucking chorus, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want some guy going, don't smoke dope, don't smoke dope, don't smoke dope. I'd rather hear you don't smoke. I mean, I give me a fucking melody or something. You guys were really good that night, and
They were.
and this will be a little bit of what you guys suspected, but a large portion of the North Side contingent were real assholes to you guys that night. And some of them were friends of mine, and I kept telling them, I was like, they were a better band than that other band of assholes who came out and told me not to smoke dope for an hour. And I'm not naming any names, but there was some real effete snobbery going on that night, pointed in your direction. And I just want to say right now, I was not in it.
Well,
Because I like you guys much. I mean, okay, not much better. I didn't like Fugazi at all. So there.
So you could essentially compare Fugazi to like a room temperature slice of pizza, and the pizza would still win. Okay.
Well, the
All right.
funny thing I remember about that show, and I first, other than the fact who on God's earth would have put those two bands on the same bill, was that we were, I think Destroyed had just come out and we had vinyl. That was, you know, we didn't even dream of putting out a CD at that point.
Yeah.
So we had...
You really made it if you're popular enough to have a fucking CD.
Oh yeah, those things were expensive
So-
and not that common yet.
So
They
we
weren't
had
at
the creative Destroyed albums and whatever early T-shirts we were trying to hawk at that point. And we got crowded onto this little card table so that Fugazi could put their literature all over the merchandise booth.
Oh yeah.
Was it literature telling me not to smoke dope?
Yes, that's exactly
them.
what it was.
Fuck
You know,
them.
how to contact Amnesty International and all this kind of stuff.
Do they have weed for sale? I'm not going to contact
Right.
them unless they got weed for sale. Or is that Greenpeace? That would make sense, right? I want some Greenpeace.
Greenpeace, there you go.
Yeah, I always had a huge problem with what was termed as straight edge, because I mean I didn't find the music all that compelling, and I really didn't want to be yelled at about what I like.
Well,
And it was in like
it's not a band I would have gone to see if we hadn't been offered the gig. We just figured there'd be an audience there.
And there was
was.
that place was about half full, which for that place was full.
Yeah, I remember several people just kind of like rolling their eyes while we were playing. So.
I don't remember any. I mean, honestly, I don't.
Well, you're
I
staring
don't
at my ass the whole time.
I don't
so.
remember anything bad necessarily. I didn't give a shit. I just slept through it. I mean,
You guys played fine. It was a good show. You know, I saw, and here's what I was sort of compared to is that when I saw Public Image Limited like the second time when the Embarrassment opened up for them, I think it was at the
Granada.
Riviera Theater or wherever the hell it was.
In Chicago.
I liked the Embarrassment. I'd seen them a couple times somewhere in smaller places, but the problem with them was that that theater was about roughly the same size as the Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Embarrassment were playing, their sound only went about 2 feet past the stage, and then it dropped. It was just like if you were anywhere past those first 2 rows, it was just like you were listening to this sort of din that didn't really do anything. It literally just fell off the side of the stage rather than hitting the entire audience. And that was right around the same time as that Fugazi show. Yeah. And I remember thinking, now their sound is coming all the way back. I had no idea why. Maybe the Embarrassment had shitty equipment. I don't know. I just remember because back then we always preferred shows in smaller places, and the Arlington was kind of big and kind of boomy, and Bill ran it with an iron fist. Bill. Okay, let's go back to Bill. He was always nice to you guys, wasn't he?
I intentionally try to get on Bill's nerves just to fuck with him a few times.
You're not going to do it worse than Fred did.
It was fun to kind of get. I have all the respect in the world for Bill Levine and Marvin Goldstein. I think those guys are the reason. They're one of the big reasons why punk rock even evolved slightly in Indiana. I applaud both of those guys, and I have a great deal of respect for both of them to this day. But Bill was always fun to fuck with. He really was.
He still is. I still do it.
No. Well, I remember you. I do remember that one of a handful of phone calls you and I had ages ago. You told me something about. I said, yeah, I'm trying to talk to Bill about doing this gig or whatever, and you said, well, we were interested in doing that, but we had another show. I said, I got to try to talk to that guy. I'd love to get on. I forget what the show was, and your reply to me was, bug him, call him up, bug him, give him hell, bug him.
Yeah, he doesn't mind. Everyone else calls him. Why not you?
Well, and I remember another. I think a great thing that was always fun to irritate Bill was with the late great comedian Patrick O'Hara.
That subject was going to come up. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Didn't you? The Mondo then?
Well, didn't you?
He opened for us once. Well, you heard the story. Like, it's a complicated story, and I gladly tell it because it's a wonderful.
Well, didn't you put?
Give the abridged version.
No, I can do this quick.
You put Patrick O'Hara in Bill's van.
I bought my very first new car. In like 1985 or 86. It was one of those Toyota vans that had the sloped front that made it kind of look like a moon buggy, and that's what we used to carry all our equipment and shit around in. Well, one day I go out and I get my car or my van, and it smells funny. And I'm like going, oh, what the fuck is that? I must have run over a skunk or something. So I'm driving along, and the smell's getting worse and worse, and I'm like, oh, man, I hope that goes away. I look under the car, there's nothing hanging there. I'm like, oh, fuck it. I get in the next day, and it's unbearable. It's like, I guess the sun had been hitting it for a day, and it's just like fucking, I'm like going, what the fuck is this? So I go around the back, I lift up the hatch, and there's a dead skunk inside my van. Bill had picked it up off the road and put it in my van, and I didn't catch it for like 2 days.
Wow.
My van stunk so bad. I mean, really, really bad. So anyway, I knew that I could get revenge, okay? So we had this show at the Vogue, and I said, Bill, my van's not big enough to carry all this equipment because Fred got a bunch of new gear and stuff. So could we switch vans for a day, and I'll use your van? And you go, okay, fine. So we took that van down south. We picked up Patrick O'Hara the early afternoon, made sure he had his keyboard so he'd have something to do, and we left him in the back of Bill's van all day in the back of the Vogue. So Bill comes walking up. He sees his van, and he hears or whatever it is that Patrick was doing. Yeah, and he comes in. And Bill said he didn't get the smell out of that van for months. And we gave him, I think on the way, we stopped at McDonald's and bought him a bag of burgers and stuff. Now, look, I have a wee bit of guilt about this now. I mean, we were always nice to him to his face. But let's not fool ourselves into thinking that he was not a figure of fun to us to a certain extent, and probably to an extent that's slightly shameful now. I'm just going to chalk it up to youth, okay? And he was always nice to me, even though I could barely understand what he was saying sometimes.
Are you talking about Bill?
No, we're talking about Patrick. Okay, Patrick O'Hara, how did you guys know him? I mean, did he go to school with you, or was
he came into Karma Records years and years ago
with his fanzine or his newspaper?
The National Liar, which was handwritten.
And his comedy tapes, because he was a big Bob and Tom fan, so he would bring us, and I still have probably 24 of his original comedy tapes that he would sit
You got
around.
the puzzle?
I made the puzzle for him.
Oh, you made the puzzle.
Yeah.
That was my Christmas gift.
I had Pat autograph.
Yeah, I had one.
Yeah. Okay. So, there you go. Well, so, but yeah, the autographed picture puzzle of Pat, spoke volumes. But Pat would come into Karma. He, and I agree with your sentiment about that, because it's borderline shameful and insulting that became such fun.
And it was fun.
Yes.
It's not our fault that it was that much fun, and it was also not our fault. It was not our fault that occasionally something would pump it back up, like that Judas Priest video. Excuse me, back up. That King Diamond video. Okay, the in-store.
The in-store.
Where you can see he's 6 people down, and the guys are going.
You see King Diamond.
Yeah. And when things like that happen, you can't help but laugh. You just can't help it.
I had Pat come in that day, and Gary was pissed. I knew he wasn't happy that Pat raided the King Diamond in-store. But that was fucking beautiful.
Mike, you haven't been
You guys
talking too
even
much.
have an aerosol can labeled Pat Away or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike hasn't
They're
talked too
awful.
much. Let's let
Awful.
Mike give a short, condensed version of who Patrick O'Hara was and what the deal was. This is up to you.
Well, Patrick O'Hara, like Steve was saying, he just wandered into Karma Greenwood.
Well, let's describe.
Did he have any physical characteristics that you could mention?
Well, let's say I'm going to guess he was about 5'3" and weighed, would you say upwards of 500 pounds?
I would say he was well over 4 bills. He was honestly almost as round as he was tall.
Yes. What else did you want to know? I'm sorry.
Any physical characteristics that you could name that made him a special person, and then let's just get into a little bit of this history here so people will know what we're talking about.
Well,
Of an olfactory nature, I'm guessing.
Yes.
he was the thing is, the guy, he clearly wasn't all there. He definitely wasn't there. And he would just say some of the most odd, outrageous things in public and not care. He would walk around, his pants would hang. He'd have a 4-inch crack that you could see out of his butt all the time.
And a distinctive stain around the
He
back
had
of his
sort of
pants.
Skin condition too, did he not?
Yes.
And do you think this added to the olfactory factor?
I think his skin, his flesh was actually rotting and dying.
Because you told me once, and I believe you because I experienced it, that you could smell him from the back of the store the minute he walked in the front door.
When he was in for his weekly visit, reading the National Liar and giving Steve and I tapes and performing his 15 minutes of stand-up, which was always unannounced and unsolicited. And after, I would say he had left the store maybe, this is 15 minutes later, and we did honestly have to go around the store with cans of Lysol and try to spray as much of the store as we could. This lady, who I'd never met in my life, walks up to the counter and she goes, "Oh my God, it's Thursday. That fat guy was in here."
Oh shit! Oh. But
Was it our fault that it was that much?
Well, when you're the age that we were, and let's face it, we were kind of like at the tail end of the cruel age. It just, there are just some things that were funny. You kids can't help it. Don't you have a stool or something? Or
Go to the kitchen, get your kitchen chair.
So, as far as your first album is concerned, did you ever get any blowback from Kiss?
No, I gave a copy to Ace Frehley when he was drunk and in a shitty mood, and he looked at it and brought a smile to his face.
Really?
Yeah.
I worked security for him for several years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, when my brother brings those shows, those autograph shows into town, I did it the first time, and then he was like, "Have that other guy do it. He was good at it. always really nice to me, and his manager just liked to tell me A stories, which
We were pretty sure if Gene Simmons ever saw it, would have been in court.
you think so?
Oh, yeah.
That'd have been. He'd have spent a lot of money and gotten nothing in return. But who knows? He might have sent us a cease and desist.
Well, oddly enough, Bill Starkey told me that Gene, out of the four of them, had the best sense of humor when he first met them back in the early days. He said Gene was the one that was telling, like, stupid dad jokes. Gene was the one that his mom liked the best. The Gene he described was not the Gene that any of us currently know. Let's talk about the video a little bit. So the first, you got your first album out, and somebody says, "Hey, we should make a video."
Are we done talking about Pat O'Hara?
Oh, I forgot about that. No, let's go back to Pat for just a second. Did his?
Let's pile on. Why
No.
don't we?
Actually, I'm gonna try to end it at least semi respectfully.
Save face.
Yeah, a little bit. Did he not?
Recant your fun.
Did he not pass away like fairly close to? Did like him and his parents all pass away within like a short amount of time? I heard something about one of them falling through the floor of the trailer or something. Was this true?
Because we're going to be respectful.
Pat, we love you, wherever you are.
Well, I mean, it was like I say, the guy had a sweet, innocent heart about him, and he, as much as it was fun to have sport with him, any of us, I think it would have protected him if someone tried to hurt him or anything. I mean, we absolutely would have. I mean, it was
sure.
He was he was Pat the pet, basically, and I mean, and his mother got sick and passed away, and then not too long after that, his father passed away, and which left Pat, who obviously was unable to care for himself, left him alone. He wound up, I think he wound up getting a cut on his foot and developing sepsis, and subsequently passed away not a few months after his father died.
Right, I knew it was all fairly close together.
Yeah.
And too young. I mean,
absolutely too young.
Way too young.
He was in his like 20s, wasn't he still?
Well, here's a bit of trivia that I don't know if you know. I think Mike may remember this, but he was cousins with Christopher Crowe, who designed the Cheap Trick logo.
I did not know that.
Yes. The classic Cheap Trick, yeah.
Yeah, the one that almost got me beat up.
Because his family was from Illinois and Wisconsin, right? In the same area near Rockford.
So,
I'll be darned.
So anyway, I'd at some point like to maybe put together an homage to Pat, because I have speaking of videos, I have like a couple of his home videos.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to put together a bunch of stuff, I would gladly put up a Patrick O'Hara page on my website.
Okay.
With like some videos and some pictures and whatever. I would gladly do it.
One of his first live performances was at Smokestack Lightning, I believe.
I remember. Yeah, we brought him down when we had our open comedy night.
Yep.
And we begged him to do Nightbird.
And he did.
Come on, you got to do Nightbird. And he kind of teased us.
Right.
He teased us for a few minutes, and then finally he just broke into it. We're just like, all right.
I remember when he humiliated Jay Baker. I've lost something about losing weight. Then he looks over his shoulder at Jay, and then I see Jay standing in that little hallway that went back to the kitchen, and Jay does this. I just watch him in the background. He does this. He goes like this. He's standing back there with his head in his hands. It was classic.
And he was robbed of his prize that night.
Yes.
He definitely had the loudest ovation.
He very much did. Well, hey, we fed him, so
I know you did.
I mean, at least he got something out of the deal. I don't know if we gave him the whole moo, cluck, oink, bite, hiss, whatever.
Did you see him?
As long as you didn't give him the cheese sticks.
Did you see him at Crackers?
No.
Yeah.
He was at Crackers?
Yeah, I've got that on video somewhere.
Yeah, I would gladly put up a nice page where maybe everybody could write maybe just a little thing, blah 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 blah.
Do you still have some National Liars? I may have a couple of the actual
Oh, yeah.
handwritten.
Yeah.
I still have
We
some
could print,
of those.
yeah, we could scan some of those and put them up.
I got some of those. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That
You got
might
the
be a
picture.
way to.
Do you still have that picture of him holding the Jolt Cola I sent you?
Yeah.
Tony, you got to see that before you get out of here.
All right, I think maybe we can do this as sort of a way of making our guilt ebb slightly. All All right, going back to this time period now. Now we'll go back to the band. Whose idea was it to do a video?
Which video?
Wasn't the one that Woody did for you the first one?
Oh, the Veronica
Yeah.
video? Oh, it was just collective ideas that we had. We thought, well, it sounded, it wasn't, we didn't think it was the best song. We just thought it was probably the most radio friendly of everything that was on there that
Right.
might make it an interesting video.
And I mean, and it cost like what, almost nothing to do. I mean,
I think it was like $400 maybe.
Did you guys snuck into the graveyard, right?
I didn't know we paid for it.
Yeah.
No, we broke into the
No,
graveyard.
we paid him, but it took us a while to pay him. And then it's like I remember the trendy video that we had filmed ourselves and Mike slapped together. That was $300. I remember that. We just gave him $300 straight up.
The time.
Because I remember when we
Probably
did
would've
the
been like
Veronica
5
video,
or 6 gigs.
it took a while for us to pay him that, but he got paid for. He got paid for both the videos.
Oh yeah, he would. Oh, Woody did too.
Yeah,
was the second one?
Well, I mean, just kind of edited.
Yeah, he put
footage
it
that
together.
was-
Oh, that's right. I think I do remember. You guys had the footage and you asked me
Yeah,
to
we
put
said,
it
hey,
together.
here's a bunch of footage,
That was
and
right.
I said we all just want a lot of quick jump cuts
Right.
and make it, and intercut this crowd scene with it, and it was.
Yeah, once his name got out
Killed
there,
the
everybody
train.
started coming to go Woody, going, "Hey man, can you put this together for us?" Because I think he did the Jot one too, didn't he? There was a Jot
did,
video that I think that Woody also did, and
I remember going in there. I took a couple of different dates in there while he was editing and things. And
that's impressive.
But that's what was funny about that. I was thinking about bringing somebody for him just to hang out with, but I figured it would distract him too much.
Okay.
But what was funny is that this was all late at night.
Right.
And now that
Because he had to do it after they were
Sure,
closed.
sure. But the thing
Same
is,
with Cotton Pick and Smash.
well,
We had to do it after they were closed.
I couldn't imagine him doing it now because that place is like Fort Knox anymore.
Right.
So I'm sure there's just no way.
Well, you know why? And it was the same when we were doing Cotton Pick and Smash. We had to go there a lot. And it was like, imagine that you're at work for 8 hours, you come home and eat dinner, and then for your job or for your hobby or for a favor or for whatever, you go back to work and do the same thing that you hated doing 8 hours before, over and over and over.
Oh, because that's
again.
how we actually met him, was after that Hard Rock Children or
Rock Hard Children.
Rock Hard Children video.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that was the thing, is he enjoyed doing it, but he hated having to go back to work to do it all the time.
I'd completely forgotten about that.
When he did it for us, he said he was working there anyway because he was editing commercials.
Right.
When we got there, he goes, "Oh, I'm done with this, and we'll work on your. I've got your shit uploaded, and we'll just edit it."
Yeah, he works fast. He's very quick.
good.
He's very quick at what he does, and he knows what he's doing. He just after we got all the footage for Cotton Pick and Smash done, it took us like 2 years to actually go into the studio for the first time to start editing, because he just didn't. He was just like, "Oh my God, it's going to be an hour and a half long. How many more times am I going to have to go into work after I get off work?" And and if we had got caught, chances are 50-50 he could have got fired, because he's doing personal stuff, of
With
personal
millions
nature
of dollars worth of equipment
that he doesn't own, and he's bringing in people. He used to edit. Remember Dave and the King? Dave Wilson.
Dave Wilson,
Dave and
yeah.
the King.
From Q95.
Yeah, and when they used to come and edit commercials, they used to like tip him with joints. They'd go, "Hey man, thanks for doing a good job," and they'd like throw him a couple of joints on the
This might
console.
be something to edit out.
I don't pot I don't care about. I am pro weed despite what Fugazi has to say to me. So, and it keeps me from killing people. So, and it helps me sleep. Okay, so going back to that time period, there was this sort of a north side, south side thing that I didn't see so much, but that Mike would point out to me on occasion. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Do you give it any credence? At the time, did you feel like that you were like not respected on one side of town as opposed to another, or?
No, not really, because there was no place to play on the south side.
Yeah,
so it didn't
you
matter.
had to go to Broad Ripple to do anything, pretty much.
Well, and I remember when we were kids, we'd go up to Broad Ripple the second time around. It was only up in fucking Broad Ripple, but from the south side, we might as well have been traveling to the moon.
Right.
But it was like, you know, it was a pilgrimage for us to go up there because we thought, oh, cool, you know, we'd save money aside. We're going to get some cool records and, you know, maybe grab some lunch up there and look around. And this guy, Bill Levine, he's got this store that sells cool shirts, and we'll go in and look at
Carfax.
We'll go in and look at the cool records and, you know, see what we can find. Oh, wow, this looks cool. I might get this Pearl Harbor and the Explosions record. You know, you're not going to find this anywhere. You know, I'd walk into some shop. There were tons of things I discovered for the first time. You know, if I didn't notice it in Cream or Hit Parader or something, and, you know, that was the go-to place to try to find something even remotely cool.
It was the same for me. I mean, I had a job where I got paid every 2 weeks. I'd get my paycheck on that Thursday. I'd cash it on Friday. On Saturday, we'd Rod Ripple, record company, Karma, second time around, grab some lunch, be broke for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It was it. We would spend our entire paycheck on records and lunch,
Sure.
and then have no money for the next 2 weeks. But we didn't care because we had like 10 new records to listen to, you know. And that was, man, used record stores saved my bacon. Can you imagine having to do all that digging and history, whatever, having to pay full price for everything?
Oh.
There's no way I could have done that. You know, I mean, when it came to a place where I could buy a whole album for $2 or $3, I mean, that was what really opened up the door as far as me being able to do the research.
Sure.
You know, that I wanted to do. Let's ditch the structure for a second. Tell me some funny stories. Anybody got crabs on the road, or, you know, violent diarrhea from European food?
I remember.
Well, there was. I was thinking of that. We were stealing.
Stealing, he meant to say.
Playing a show in Newport in Wales, and there was this. The guy who owned the pub was like a veteran local failed politician. He just kept running for office on some third party ticket year after year after year, and he'd always get defeated. And so above the venue is common with a lot of places in Europe, especially in the UK. There's a little apartment where they put the band up after the show, and you get to stay there, and sometimes they even, like, say, come downstairs and have breakfast in the morning or something like that. Well, he had this apartment where we stayed, and it was actually pretty cozy, you know, because in the UK everything's all wet and rainy all the time, but it was a pretty warm apartment, which is a big deal in the UK.
Yeah.
And but it was part of this like communal floor, and so the next morning I get up and I walk to the bathroom outside this apartment where we were staying. I was shaving, and this guy leans in the door who, I don't know if you remember in Monty Python's Meaning of Life when Terry Gilliam has like the dreadlocks and those big glasses and everything. And says, "What are you doing?" You know, this guy looked exactly like that, and he says, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm with the band that played." And he's like, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm shaving." And he's like, "All right. How long are you going to be in here?" I was like, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well," I said, "I'm just shaving. You need to." He said, "Well, I'm not going to be shaving." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, so whatever." So I go back to shaving the fucking whiskers off my face, and about 5 minutes later, he's banging on the door, and he's like, "Jesus Christ, do you fucking live here?" And I'm like, "No, I don't live here." And he said, "I've got a bus ticket in 5 minutes, and I'm busting with crap. Will you get the fuck out of here?"
How many times have you been to Europe?
3 times, 4 times. I think
Yeah,
we went 3 tours, and we were flown over there for a festival a few years ago.
Do you book your own tours over there, or do you have somebody else do it for you?
We worked with an agent at the time over there. The guy we work with currently, he's actually the same guy who works with the Dead Kennedys, minus Jello.
Right.
He's got connections over there, so we're talking. We're trying to work exclusively with him.
I see. And you just recently toured like the West Coast, right?
Yeah, we did some shows out
That was
there.
what, 2 or 3 months ago?
Yeah.
Into September.
September.
And how'd that go?
It was great. I mean,
Good crowds.
Well, there were several of the venues were sold out. I mean, keep in mind they were only 300-400 seaters, but they were still great crowds. I mean,
Right.
Sold out. The Viper Room sold out, and that's not very big either. But it was great. I mean, for us not being out, because it'd been many years since we'd been out there, and we were very pleased to see the response that we got, because we expected it to be decent, but then the agent was said, hey, I think some of these venues are doing really well. So.
Well, the thing is, you've got a lot of records out, so you've got a lot of opportunities for people to discover you, and you've been around for 30 years now, something like that, 25, 30 years?
Almost, yeah.
Okay, so, and the thing is nowadays, the longer that you've been together, the more chance people have of being exposed to you. So you've got 30 years of exposure. I mean, it seems to me it would be easy for you to do well on the road, just because there are lots of people who have oh man, I remember them when I was this age or this age or this age, or whatever age they were that discovered you.
That is one thing I think that we've got in our corner is a lot of people said, that album was the soundtrack of my favorite summer of my life.
Right.
And I was just okay, you really had a shitty life then, buddy.
No, dude, it helps that the songs are catchy, and it helps if you put forth those songs with some energy, when you're in the room. I mean, people remember that stuff. You come back 10 years later, and you're going to have people going, oh man, I saw them back in 89 and they were hot. We should go.
And I think the songs are relatable too.
Yeah.
Everybody has somebody that they don't want to have to drive home when they're drunk on their floor.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So, I think that does give us a little bit of staying power in that respect. People remember, their first time they played the Destroyed album for their friends or something like that.
Well, I had quite a few guys that were in their 20s come up and tell me this last time, man, people showing up with their parents, and this kid told me, he goes, man, I remember the first time I ever heard you guys, I was 2 and 3, and I was 5 or whatever, and then I'd say, let me guess, your dad, you drove around and your dad played it in the car. He goes, yeah, how'd you know?
Well,
how'd you know? I said, because I've heard that story hundreds of times.
Yeah, most of the people I've talked to so far have been in my age range-ish, and when I ask them, what's the first thing you remember hearing, it's usually Beatles. Usually, I'm talking to these guys, Mars and the Massacre, and I'm talking to the kid in the band is Tom Doherty's son, Tom Doherty,
Yep.
and I asked him, I said, okay, what's your first musical memory? And he goes, sitting in the car seat with my mom listening to Nirvana really loud, and I just felt like I was 110 years old. I was just like, can't drink.
We have the mix. We have 10-year-olds and 50-year-olds.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, if I could take my mom to a punk rock show, I probably would have at the time. I took her to see Prince. That was about as good as we got. Well, I think that's great.
Remember Dave and Lois, the guy that always brought his silver-haired mother to the shows?
Did I ever tell you about the idea I had for a commercial for the Ritz? Was it the Ritz or the Arlington?
It was both.
Was it the same
Arlington
place called the
became
same
the
place?
Ritz. Yeah.
Okay, I told Bill that he should have that woman lay on the ground and go, help! I've fallen and I can't get to the Ritz!
Okay, good one.
He never asked her. But that was the weirdest thing because nobody could figure out if they were married but they're mom and son, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
and he was actually quite a bit younger than we are now when they were going to those shows. He was only 140.
I always thought he was really old. He
Well,
looked old to me.
Well, the thing about that guy is he always reminded me of the character in the original Kiss comic book that gave them their talisman.
Right. Well, the thing was,
Fair play.
Make fun or not. I mean, they supported everybody. I mean, they were at shows. They bought tickets. I mean, they were always getting, whether it was a band they may
loved
not
to rock.
like or not, they were there.
Well, I remember going out. I had to go up to there was a metal show that was going there, and I had to go there to see Levine for some reason. And they were going through, and people were being searched. It was going through. And I remember Lois, the old lady. She was complaining because they had her take her gauntlet off her arm. She was, this is just ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
She had a big Rob Halford thing.
Yeah, they had her take it off. Had this gray-haired lady grandmother take it off.
Was it Tufty that Rob Halford made a pass at? Was that the?
I heard it was.
It's Terry Hollywood.
Was
is
it
what
Terry
I heard.
Hollywood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I remember. Yeah, I remember. It was several years.
I think that
before
was the
he-
convention center show.
Yeah,
right?
several years before
See, I'd
he
actually
came
heard
out.
it was Bam Bam.
Yeah, I heard Bam Bam too, actually.
But there were rumors going around at the Hyatt Regency, I think. Yeah. Is that show at the convention center that we saw?
Yeah, that was
This song is about desert plains, and it's
81.
called
Desert
Desert Plains. We're just like laughing so hard. We're like, he didn't really just say that.
This is a song about. El Duce did the same thing. This is a song about being a peeping Tom. It's called I Am a Peeping Tom.
So you guys opened for the Mentors, right? Did you have any sort of interaction with them at all?
Well, we
Yes.
talked a little bit about it. I mean,
Steve actually became kind of friendly with him for a long time. He's still in touch with.
they sent me
Heathen Scum.
They sent me a bunch of like old Mentor outtakes that they never released and
from
things.
Mentor's Fuck movie.
Yeah. I remember when that was rare. I mean, I had like a third or fourth generation copy, and I was just like, I got it.
color
I got
lines.
It.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what was funny is recently I didn't expect him to show up, but Steve Broy, aka Dr. Heathen Scum, came to our Las Vegas show, and then next thing we knew, he was there at the Viper Room.
Uh-huh.
You know, and that was
Right.
that was a bit odd.
Wow. Did you ever hear about when the Mentors were here the second time? Well, the first time they stayed at Bill's house.
Did you know they just played here not too long ago?
I did know that.
Okay.
But without El Duce, it's just not the same.
Well, of course.
But anyway, but they stayed at Bill's house the first time, and Mary Mitchell, who he was dating at the time, was one of the stars.
Yes, I love this story.
She hated them. She was like, "You are not to bring them back in this house ever again. Do you understand? Never." She fucking hated them. So when they came back the next time, of course, they had nowhere to stay. And Bill goes, "Okay, look, you come into the house, you go in the back room, and you stay there, okay? You stay there." So he brings the Mentors home to his house. He tiptoes in. Mary's asleep on the couch. So he goes, "Okay, go back to your room here. I'll grab you some coffee or some beer or whatever it is that they want. So Bill goes in the kitchen to do whatever he's doing, make some coffee, get the beers, whatever. Turns around and El Duce's gone. And he looks over, and El Duce is hanging over the couch, going like this, about 3 inches away from her while she's asleep. And she didn't wake up. But
What I heard was her eyes open up and she says, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And as if Bill's not in enough trouble already.
Right. Well, that might have been what
El
happened.
Duce says, "I just wanted to see those itty bitty titties Bill showed me on the video."
Oh, the fruit salad. Was that
what I've heard.
Was that the fruit salad video that was going around there for a while? Yeah, that was one of my biggest mistakes. I could have actually had a Bill Levin porn video had I just played my cards slightly differently.
Yeah.
Because Bill was into it, and she was into it, but I had 2 guys standing there with lamps, staring, and she just looked, and she's just like, I can't do this. And that was after she had completely covered Bill with whipped cream and syrup and fruit and everything. And then he's trying to get her to do something. I mean, it's kind of, if you've ever seen it, he's trying to push her head down there and stuff. And she's just not having any of it. And finally she flips his cock a couple times with her hand and says, "I'm done." And she ran out of the room. That video does exist.
Those
It's
were
out
the
there
days.
somewhere.
Out there somewhere.
But I lost my copy, and so whatever copies exist are copies that were made for people, and they may or may not have kept them. So, all right. Well, we've
Well,
gone
if
on.
Mike doesn't have a copy of it, it doesn't exist.
Well, I still have a lot of my VHS tapes, actually.
Well, oh yeah, me too.
But I don't have that one. That one got lost over. There are 2 tapes that got lost over time. That's one of them. And the other one is I had a full 2 hours of Robert Tilton talking in tongues. That also had some of his miracle cures, like the lady with the tarry stool and stuff. And I lent that tape to somebody, and it disappeared. And it took a long time to compile that thing too. You remember Robert Tilton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yes, the hair.
Great hair.
The coif.
Yes. All right. So we've been going now for about.
How long's your show?
I usually try to keep it around an hour. So if you guys would like to wrap it up with any sort of messages, funny stories, new records coming out.
Well, I don't think
new tour coming out.
We didn't share enough funny stories. You know, one of my favorite.
Oh, you can go to town.
Well, I don't remember all the details, but just little charming things like when we were in Texas once, B.A. went up on a roof with some kids and to get drunk and fell to the roof of their house.
Oh,
yeah,
wow!
All the way up to his thigh.
So I'm told.
Yeah, down to his leg to the roof. So.
You remember Steve Kowalski, right? Did you ever play
something
with
about
them?
an army?
Yeah, well, they were sometimes called that, sometimes not. They played someplace in like Columbus or Dayton or something, and they went in the restroom. They were trying to clean up before the show, and one of them like took the paper towel holder and pulled out a paper towel and like ripped the entire thing out of the wall, and it fell to the ground. And they're like going, "Oh shit, they're gonna kill us!" Well, Tom Shover was sitting on the sink, and apparently the sink also came out of the wall, and there was like water spraying all over the place, and they just like all like ran out and just sat down and went like, just like. Wasn't us. But yeah, it was just like, when you're on the road, just things sometimes tend to happen like dominoes, And I think that was one of them. So.
We were driving through South Central. Actually, we're in East LA. And we had this old 1978 Dodge Tradesman that we got it because it had an extended back end, so we put like a wooden barrier up to put all the gear in the back and a little white leather bench seat from like an old Cadillac or something in the back where they sat. And these guys are pigs. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, there's like rat's nests of Kleenex and fucking chocolate milk cartons everywhere after a couple days in the van. At some point, Bo apparently had bought this glass jug of orange juice and drank half of it and decided, not feeling too good, and just kind of
glass half gallon
scooted it in the general direction of the front end of the van because that was far away from him, so who cares? And the bucket seats up front had those little carpet skirts around the bottom of them, So this jug of orange juice, half drunk, had gotten scooted under the driver's seat. And we have this van with no air conditioning. When we drove through the California desert and it's 108 degrees outside, we kept the windows up because it was not as hot inside the van as it was outside. And, after I'd been driving all night, they just would like put an ice cube on the crack of my ass and watch it just melt on my skin. So,
now why didn't you leave with that?
As hot as it is in this van already, we're driving through the barrio. I mean, we are in the roughest looking neighborhood in East LA, and we just heard this BAM! This explosion. I was like, holy shit, somebody's shooting at us. And then I said, wait, something hit my leg, and that orange juice had combusted because it had been cooking in that fucking van for so long. Soaked into the carpet on the van. It's just this horrible sweet stench.
It's fermented.
And I said, well, here's the gun shop, man. It's your fucking orange juice bottle. And good old Ace, he looks at it. He said, I guess we should just be glad it wasn't a bottle of piss.
Another good piss story was we had this 20-passenger green rental van. It was like an airport shuttle bus.
Sure.
We had it. We decked it out. This is when we traveled extensively for a few months, and we put seats in. We even put a TV in. Everything.
Yeah.
And there was there was a small little hole in the floor, and see, Bo had his bolted down recliner, okay, and there was a small little hole in the floor. So Boba got this idea that he got himself a funnel, and there was a little hose that he got, and he just set it down there, and whenever he'd sit there and he'd have to piss, we'd be driving along. Hey, we don't need to stop. I mean, this was after he exhausted his piss bottles or whatever. So he'd sit there and he'd be sitting there, and I'd look over and he'd be like, he goes, he motioned, just don't look, man, turn around. So anyway, he'd be pissing in this funnel, okay? And I'm like, shit, we're fucking moving through like city traffic. We're on 30, 40 miles an hour. And it's like I knew the piss was just going down under the bottom of it was a big green bus.
Right.
And I'm like, the fuck, and as he's pissing, I stand up to look out the rear area, and we're driving in the piss. It's like a mist that's coming up that's like hitting this person's windshield, and then they turn the fucking wipers on like this. The wipers are moving, and the guy's sticking his hand out, flipping us off like, fuck, what are you doing? So this guy had to hit his windshield wipers, and his windshield's car was soaked with a mist of piss that was just blowing back.
I'm probably thinking you were doing it to him on purpose.
Well, yeah, it's like they don't. I mean, it wasn't. He didn't mean to spray their car with piss.
Not our fault it was that much fun.
Yeah, it was just the byproduct of him doing what he had to do.
Well, that being said, that's an ingenious idea for saving yourself time on the road when you don't have time to be stopping
it was a
every
little
5
hole,
minutes.
and he just made it a little bit bigger. And then when he was done, he would just set his little hose and funnel down.
Nice. I think that's a good idea, actually. I would much rather, if I were in a van, I'd much rather have someone do that than to have jars of urine in the because I mean,
having experience.
Well, I've heard stories. I've heard stories of
well,
better
he
idea.
would take, and he had a fucking jar of piss, and some.
It was like a big old pickle jar.
Yeah, and some kids fucking stupid.
Ironically.
Yeah. Well, these kids came up. And they were having us sign some stuff, and Bo trying to be funny to get shocked by him.
Hey, here.
Hey, look, man, I got a jar of piss here. So he's like, oh, the guy's laughing and everything. Bo's like, hey, you want it? And the kid's like, sure. True story. So this kid's walking, he's walking off the bus, and then, we drive away from the club about 20 minutes later, and we're driving. There's that kid walking down the street holding that piss jug with his buddies, just like smiling, like, wow.
Yeah. Well, he's gonna take it home, put it next to that jar he got from Maxine.
Yeah. Well, I got a big jar of piss here from Boba Jam.
Jason was a good observer of those moments because he just looked at him and said, "Yeah, he's a charmer."
What the fuck?
All right. So you guys just had a record come out recently too, a 45, right? A single.
Yeah, we did a split 7-inch last year.
That's right. Are you planning anything new?
Well, we've got tons of material that's laying around. Some of it's a couple years old. Some of it's 7 or 8 years old. We're just, just looking at, when we can collectively get together and share MP3s and WAV files and come up and organize everything. Because Boba's out in Seattle and Ace is in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, so you don't all live here in town?
No, just B.A.
Oh.
So Bo lives in Boba Jam is in
difficult.
Seattle. Ace Hardware's in Nashville. So, we collect.
Every time we tour, we have to buy airline tickets.
Yeah. So,
man.
Yeah, that's why we only do like a couple of weeks a year usually. So, I mean, we could do more, but it's just, why we don't want to overstay our welcome. And when we go out, we have a great time. So.
I was gonna say it sounds like it.
Oh,
so,
yeah. I mean, it's
yeah,
like,
we piss on people.
it's like a fucking
explode orange juice bombs, and
it's like fucking being, it's like getting in our own little personal time machine because it's like nothing's changed.
Sure.
It's just great. We love going out and playing. So.
Do you get offers fairly often that you have to say like, well, no, we can't?
We get offers all the time that we unfortunately have to say we can't.
Yeah, I hate having to turn down. Sometimes it's just not cost effective. If somebody wants you to come play a festival and they can offer you, a couple grand, but you got to spend close to that just getting everybody in one place. So
now, how far east in Europe have you played?
We played 90 minutes from the Russian border.
Really?
Yeah, we played in Łódź, Poland with GBH.
And
it was broadcast
Poznan.
Łódź
and Poznan.
Yeah, it was broadcast on national Polish television.
Is it on YouTube?
Parts of it are, I think.
Yeah, it is on YouTube now. The whole thing, I think.
It was with our buddy Kevin on guitar. I mean, it wasn't. It was just straight ahead bar chords. It was okay.
was strange, though. I mean,
Yeah, everything about it was fucking
just,
strange.
They were like soldering a soundboard together as we're.
Yeah, it was like big American rock concert.
Yeah, well,
here in Poland.
it's still East Europe.
Yes, it was. Oh, absolutely it was.
Oh, well, okay, here's an interesting story about that. Apparently, and we were not the headliner, we were opening for GBH. We were paid the equivalent of what a headmaster of a school there earns in 3 months.
Uh-huh.
And it was in
Zlotys.
Zlotys. And we were told, spend the money, because you can't take it out of Poland.
We can't get anything for it.
Right. Well, that's the whole thing. So we went into this little gas station, and we're just handing him these 100,000 zlotys and everything, just buying up all this chocolate and cokes and stuff. And the guy's eyes were about getting this big around. We're like, we'll take some of those garden gnomes and shit,
Yeah, I want some of those donuts made out of wax.
The band that was first on the bill, they actually came across the border, and as soon as they got into Germany, they're like, no. They tried to give the street urchins begging at the border 500,000 zlotys. They said, no, give me a mark.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I remember after the show, we were with GBH in this bar, the hotel bar. They kept the bar open and it was just us and GBH in the bar playing pool. And we would buy Snicker bars, and and the tipping the bartender, and for every time I'd give him some of this Zloty Monopoly money, and I said, just keep the change, because we weren't taking any of it back. We were leaving the next day. I remember tipping him like however many thousand zloty, and he just was like just overwhelmed. He almost started crying. I'm like, it's okay. It's great. But anyway, when we were leaving and trying to get back across the border, that's when we had fun with the rest of our money that we earned for doing this dumbass gig.
Right.
There was a European, a British support band called, what were they called? Toothbrush? Reverse. They were, and we used their back line, and they were behind us in line to go across the border. Mm-hmm. So there were these Polish kids that were coming up saying, and we told them things to say, to go back and yell at the British guys and the band behind us. And we'd give them so many thousands of zloty to go back there, and we told them what to say, and then they'd go back there and they would knock on the door.
Give me a Coke, cocksucker.
Yeah.
Do you have any urine?
No. They said I had them knock on the door, and I heard they're mumbling or whatever. And I heard, what? And then I heard the kid yell while I told him. He said, "Fuck you, motherfucker! USA, Coca-Cola, fuck you, suck my dick." And then they go, "What did you say?" Coca-Cola, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Why earn the money if you can't enjoy it?
Yeah. Well, I had something similar happen. I went to East Berlin like 4 months before the wall came down, and in order to go over back then, you had to exchange 30 marks for their money, and then you had to go over and spend all of it. You couldn't bring any of it back because they wouldn't exchange it back, and you had to bring receipts to show that you had spent every cent of it legitimately. You couldn't just get in a cab and go, drive me around for 30
buy
marks.
Drugs, yeah.
Or whatever. So it's a Saturday afternoon. It's a Saturday afternoon, and Duncan White, that's who I was with from Modern Vending. So we're like, okay, it should be easy to spend. We'll get some Stalin T-shirts or whatever the fuck they got over there. We didn't quite understand socialism at that point, and so we get our money, we go across, and there's nothing. There's no people. There's no cars. We're looking around, and we're going, what the fuck? Where is everybody? So we start walking, and there's a museum of Soviet greatness. There's this statue of Lenin and a bunch of people with wrenches and machinery and shit. And we're like, there's not even a gift shop in here. What the fuck? So we start walking, and all we see is window after window after window of cans, all stacked exactly the same. Pineapple and salmon. Pineapple and salmon in every window for a couple blocks. We were like, is that all they have here? Is this? But none of them were open. We would have bought 30 marks worth of salmon or pineapple, just giving it to somebody just to get rid of that money. So we see a museum. We go, oh, there's a museum. They got to have a gift shop. Let's go in. Let's see. This should take care of most of our money. How much is it to get in? 10 cents. Oh, so finally, I mean, we are literally running around trying to get rid of this money because we're nervous because the story was they wouldn't let you back across the border unless you spent it and show the receipts. So I see a big sign that says hotel. I was like, they got to have some sort of a gift shop or something. So we run in there, and they do. They have a gift shop that if you were in Poland, you probably saw the same shit. Nasty Balkan cigarettes, nasty Russian chocolate, and like little pins that have pictures like Lenin and Stalin and stuff. And the lady doesn't speak a lick English, so we're like going, spend. Spend. And the lady's like, she would like take one off of her hand, throw us a bunch of shit, and then put it in a drawer, ring up with her receipt, put it in a trash can. We're like, receipt. We need the receipt. Finally, she figured it out. She reaches in the garbage can and just hands us a fistful of receipts. Just here, just
Perfect.
take all these. So we ended up with a ton of cigarettes that we didn't smoke, and chocolate was too nasty to eat.
Oh.
And we just brought it all back and gave it to Tom Watts.
That's what I do with it.
Yeah. Tom Watts was like, free cigarettes? Yeah! Because he used to carry, I don't know if you remember this or not, but Tom Watts used to carry Altoids tin with him, and he would pick up half and quarter smoked cigarettes from wherever he happened to be walking, and he would put them in there and collect them so that he would not have to buy cigarettes.
Dylan is on his Robitussin character.
I was going to say the cough syrup kit.
It was around that time, yes. It was around that time.
Wow.
Very much so.
Wow.
Hey, I'm
All
gonna
right.
be interested. What is it? What's the stuff you brought that we have to for that kid? Or?
Yeah. I think we're pretty much done.
Yeah, okay. I can just fade it down with him going to the bathroom, or you can go. You want to slide it?
And there you have it, my talk with B.A. and Steve Sloppy. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We have another podcast coming out next week, so keep an eye peeled for that. Like I said before, if you feel like throwing some money my way, it'll make traveling and paying for the website a whole hell of a lot easier, but I understand there's probably more important things in the world to donate your money to, so I don't take it personally if you don't. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm gonna close this out with Sloppy's version of the first record I ever bought. Take it away.
Alright, everybody, gather round and hold out your hands, 'cause I'm the Candy Man. Who can get a sunrise, wrap it in a dew, cover it with chocolate and a miracle is due, the Candy Man can. Who can take a rainbow, wrap it in a sigh, soak it in the sun and make a groovy lemon pie, the Candy Man can. The Candyman can, 'cause he makes it go we love and makes the world taste good. The Candyman makes everything he makes satisfying and delicious. Talk about your childhood wishes. You can't even eat the dishes. Who can take a sorrow, wrap it in a dream, separate tomorrow and collect up all the cream. The Candyman can.
You can take a rainbow, wrap it inside, soak it in the sun and make a groovy lemon pie.
The Candyman can, 'cause he makes it go we love and makes the world taste good. The Candyman makes everything he makes satisfying and delicious. Talk about your childhood wishes, all you hungry sons of bitches. Candyman